Hey there, I'm Jeremy. I'm a product manager here at GitLab. Here at GitLab, we've been doing product walkthroughs a little bit more, which are just quick show and tell sessions around different areas of the product, showing off kind of our experience, our expectations, and kind of what we actually saw in the application when we tried to accomplish a certain task. Right now, I just walked through a quick project import export kind of task, which I'll show off kind of later in the video. But overall, I was interested to kind of understand what it would be like if I imported a project from both another GitLab self-managed instance and also Bitbucket Cloud and tried to push that into GitLab.com. Overall, I give the overall experience kind of a B, B minus. The single project export import experience was pretty fast, pretty straightforward. There was some reasonably good documentation around it that at least that covered the main pillars of kind of what I went through. I think the experience was especially good for Bitbucket Cloud, where we have a pretty good integration. And there was a nice import all repositories button where he just was able to push that and then just have a worker kind of iterate through my projects in Bitbucket. I think some areas of improvement, though, definitely emerged. And I think a couple of these, I was definitely aware of, which was the export kind of scales poorly, where, this was a scenario around a single project, which I think is fine. But if I'm a mature GitLab instance with hundreds of users and hundreds of projects, scripting to kind of iterate through this using our project export import API, I think would become pretty challenging and would take a lot of time. I think that, I'd love to see better kind of capabilities around, importing and exporting at the group level, as well as just a better kind of user experience around, we're able to offer this really cool kind of import all experience from Bitbucket Cloud. There's no real reason why we can't do that for self-managed to GitLab.com, I don't think. I think our documentation should also be clearer. There were a couple of questions that I had kind of moving through the docs that were a little bit confusing, especially around user mapping for GitLab.com. I think could use a little bit of clarity. I ran into a bug where I was trying to import a project and it was a hard stop. I wasn't able to kind of complete that task without some Googling. I was able to find another GitLab issue which had some workaround information, which was great. But ideally, we shouldn't have run into that. And I think the last three items were items we were already aware of, like when you're importing a project into GitLab.com, you're not able to really attribute kind of user objects to specific users, where the user that is performing the project import has all the merge requests and issues and pipelines all associated with them as the author. So if you are a GitLab instance with many different users, all contributing different things, having an import experience which just attributes all that work kind of to one person, who the importer to the project importer, is less than ideal. So I think that there's definite room for us to be able to have a better import experience and be able to perform that mapping and map those various objects to users. There's also some missing items in the import. I think some of these items that we leave out of the project import make sense, like build artifacts, for instance, which can obviously increase the size of the import considerably if we decided to include those. But there are other things like CI variables, for instance, or others that we could consider trying to include. There's obviously some security questions around some of it that we need to be able to answer, but overall, there's probably more we could be able to do to, make the artifacts that we kind of export as complete as we can make them. And then lastly, I think the UX needs improvement. There's some areas that we could make the UX better. There's a couple of error messages that were confusing when I ran into that hard stop namespace not valid. It was really confusing as to kind of what to do next. The import all repositories experience is overall pretty good with Bitbucket and some of our other importers, but I think that it wasn't really clear as to what to do next once the worker kind of iterated through all of the projects and and it had completed. It just kind of sat there and with the spinner continuing to spin despite all the work being completed. So overall, like I mentioned, kind of a B minus experience overall. Please take a look and continue to view on if you're interested in kind of the specific walkthrough. But overall, we'll be creating issues and trying to get some of these improvements prioritized. And it was really enlightening for me walking through this. So I'm sharing my screen here. I have a self-managed GitLab instance here at a different domain than GitLab.com, and I just have a simple group here, where I have a series of personal applications. Here I just have like a simple Rails app. So as someone that has no idea how to migrate over to move things over to GitLab, I'm going to start with the documentation. Let's say my move self-managed GitLab to GitLab.com. Migrating projects to GitLab instance. That sounds pretty good. List a bunch of things here. Migrating from self-host to GitLab.com. Cool. If you only need to migrate repos, you can import each project by URL, but issues and merge requests can't be imported. So I would like to keep those. So if you want to retain all metadata, you can use the import-export feature to export projects from self-host to GitLab and import those. That sounds pretty good. It's important. It assumes all users have already been migrated. The user conducting the import will take the place of all references to the missing users. I'm not sure what this approach assumes all users from the self-hosted instance have already been migrated means. And so if you need to migrate all data over, you can leverage our API to migrate from self-hosted to GitLab.com. The order of assets to migrate from a self-hosted instance to GitLab is the following. Users, groups, projects, project variables. Cool. Keep in mind limitations of the import-export feature. You'll still need to migrate over your container registry over a series of Docker pulls and rerun any CI pipelines to retrieve any build artifacts. Okay. According to this, there's some stuff that's going to be exported, project and wiki, project uploads. So the following items will not be exported. Build traces and artifacts. So I guess I'll have to run my pipelines and recreate those. Container registry images, CI variables, webhooks, encrypted tokens, merge request approvers, etc. So this project is fairly simple, but if it was more complicated, it might be a bit of a pain because I'd have to move all this stuff over by hand after the project is recreated, I guess. So that's not awesome. So if you need to migrate all data over, the order of assets to migrate from self-hosted instance to GitLab is the following: users. So I guess I'll start with that, I guess. Leverage our API to migrate from self-hosted to GitLab.com. So I'll just click on this. And that's just like a generic API doc thing, so that's not very helpful. The order of assets to migrate to GitLab is the following: users API, and so that's not very clear. User import export. So I think what's really not clear here is the fact that if you're moving over to GitLab.com, migration of users on GitLab.com is something that's an admin assisted kind of task. So this is not something that makes it very clear that this is kind of the primary migration path, which is where the users haven't been migrated over, and the user can actually conducting the import takes place of all references to the missing users. So that part is not especially clear here. So I think our documentation could probably use a facelift here. The import-export feature to export projects. So let's give that a try. Any existing projects are being exported with the related data. See also the import. Important notes, importing is not possible. It must be enabled in application settings. So exporting a project as data. Go to your project's homepage. Click settings in the sidebar. Scroll down to find the export project function. So your project's homepage. So I guess I have to do this. And then I go to this. And then click settings in the sidebar. So you just click settings, and then I go down here to export project. Export projects, you get a bunch of data here. The export is finished. You can export the file for the new project page. Okay, let's try that. Export project. Project export started. A download link will be sent by email. Okay. So it just said that I can download it from this page. So I'm not sure why it is telling me that if it says the download link is going to be sent by email. Does that? Okay. So the download export button did show up here. So that's okay. But that error is not particular. That banner is not super clear. So this downloaded as a tar file here, as a tar ball, and then I'm just going to go over here to, let's see, you should receive an email. So there's the link. You're going to download the file generated to export, download export. Okay, that's fine. Importing the project. The GitLab project is the first import feature when create a new project. Click on GitLab export. So over here, I've created an account on gitlab.com. And this is what I kind of see after registering and logging in. So it says, please check your email to verify that you own this address and unlock the power of CI/CD. Didn't receive or resend it. Free trial to GitLab Gold. I think that create a project seems to be the most relevant here. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to click import project. And then I will import project from a GitLab export here. And it says import export project. So my Rails app project slug is fine. And then I will find the tarball, which is here. And then click import project and see how long this takes. Project cannot be imported. Namespace is not valid. Okay. Not sure what that means exactly. I'm guessing that the project slug supposed to be different here than my Rails app. Okay, import project. Still namespace is not valid. Okay. So importing the project, is there some kind of error here that I can talk about? Import project unit importing. Really import project page will begin to appear soon. Okay. So I'm looking at this and that all seems to be fine. I'm wondering if does the name of the project have to be the same or what? So Rails app, let's try that. And then project cannot be imported. Namespace is not valid. What does that mean exactly? So we have this. Importing is it's worked fine. Which group is experiencing this issue? Just one logged into. Project namespace is not valid. The import requires the same group name from exported project to the new project. So that's very frustrating. And it looks like that if I absolutely need to have the group name that is which is the same as my group. So that's really frustrating and confusing. That's obviously not mentioned in our documentation. So let me go ahead and try to recreate that. So my group is here. And I'll create a new project in my group that I will import from. Project URL is this, and then Rails, and then I'll try my Rails app. Choose a slightly different project slug, and then I will import the project, and that is working. So let's see how long this takes. Okay, so that was pretty quick. The repo here is pretty small because it's just a basic Rails app. So that seemed to work okay. Okay, so now this project is not currently set up to run pipelines. I think that the other project was set up to run pipelines. Oh, it was not. Okay. So did this have okay, it did not have I did not have a CI YAML file for this particular project. So, so in conclusion, I mean, this was okay. I mean, I think that the whole process could have been a lot smoother. As someone who just joined GitLab.com for the first time and was looking to import my project, there wasn't like a great option, a very clear way of being able to do that. The documentation wasn't clear in terms of what steps I needed to take and what limitations there were. I think it was kind of a little bit confusing in terms of what I needed to do in terms of user mapping. I would like to try this with a project that has or like an already created that's using private runners, and then also has a the GitLab YAML file that I would need to. I'm not honestly sure what would happen if that would immediately start using our shared runners on GitLab.com, or if I'd have to do some more configuration for CI/CD. But overall, I'm a little disappointed that we have this issue with the namespace and the group needing to be the same. And I would expect that to be able to import the project independent of the namespace. I don't think that should really matter. So I think that I'll create some issues to be able to kind of repair some of those issues, and then I'll work on like a more elaborate walkthrough kind of later on. I am kind of curious about moving from Bitbucket. So I have like a very, very, very bare bones test repo here. And I'm curious as to kind of what the experience is like there, if it's any better or worse. So I'm going to go ahead and try and search for that again. So moving from Bitbucket to GitLab. Import your project from Bitbucket Cloud to GitLab. So this sounds pretty relevant. Import your project from Bitbucket Cloud to GitLab with minimal effort. Let's see. So the Bitbucket Cloud integration must be first enabled. I'm not sure what the status of that is. We do have that on GitLab.com, but it's not readily obvious here that that's the case. Importing your Bitbucket repositories to sign in, go to your dashboard, click on your project, click on Bitbucket Cloud. Okay, let's do that. Back to GitLab.com. I'll go to my group because it's where I want this project. And then I will import and I will click Bitbucket Cloud. Oh, okay. So this already has this available. So that's pretty cool. And it looks like we have a badge for a Mercurial project that I have. So that's helpful. Let's see, one of your, that's actually nice. That's nice that that it shows off that like we don't support Mercurial, and you know, to convert those projects to Git before you're able to do the import flow again. That's pretty good. I like that, you know, there's already a nice import all compatible projects button here that I can use. I had the chance to configure the project slugs whenever I want to, and then import those individually. So let's just click this and see what happens. There's some spinners here. It looks like that's done. And that's done too. That's awesome. And I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do at this point. I see this spinner is still working for some reason, even though everything is done. So I guess the process is finished, and now I can click into the repository I'm interested in. Pretty good up until this point. I'd like to see we have some sort of like finished state here, or like next button to be able to showcase that like the work is finished, and like we can do something, do the next thing. So click into this. Looks good. This is all fine. My issue that I have here looks like it was moved over. So I did have an issue created by my username on Bitbucket Cloud, and is allocated to my username that I have on GitLab.com. So that's as I expected under the documentation. Not the best if I have hundreds and hundreds of issues created by many, many different people. So that's not a great experience. So overall, like, it was a decent experience. I think that, you know, especially for Bitbucket, I think we have a pretty decent kind of integration with Bitbucket that allowed me to just like click import all repositories. That was pretty nice. but I think that there's still some probably UX improvements that we can make on that side. I'd like to see a better solution kind of for how we map users and individual artifacts to folks on GitLab.com. But I think that um, the bug that we kind of discovered that and pointed out around like importing of a self-managed GitLab tarball into GitLab.com, I'd love to see us kind of prioritize that and get that fixed. So overall, some issues and lots of room for improvement, I think. I'd love to rerun this exercise for both a more complicated kind of like import export scenario to see kind of what happens with a more mature project using all of GitLab's features. I'd love to see like a project that uses like all 10 stages essentially of GitLab and see kind of what is missing whenever we try to import and export that. Or rather export and import it. And finally, I think that I'd love to see prioritize more walkthroughs for other areas and manage like authentication and configuration of something like LDAP and SAML, a based identity provider. So overall, not bad, but I think that there's lots of room for improvement. So we'll get it working on some issues and get those prioritized. So thanks a lot for watching. Cheers.